Well, hello and welcome. My name is Mark Epner. I'm a Chicago-based pilot with over half of my 2,000 plus hours in a Cirrus SR-22. Currently, I fly this 2011 normally aspirated G3, but also fly other aircraft when the opportunity presents itself. I love flying every bit as much as you do and look for ways to share that common bond through multiple paths, including this channel, as well as Simple Flight Radio, which you can find at simpleflight.net. My goal for the channel is to share my passion for aviation with others that share that same sentiment and do so with an eye towards proficiency, safety, and fun. This week I had planned to share with you how we break in new cylinders, as my bird had 6 freshly honed cylinders installed during the month. Weather and schedules delayed us to the end of the month, which happened to coincide with the plane's required annual inspection. So flying in my plane is delayed 2 to 3 weeks. To say I was feeling a little withdrawal being grounded with no way to relieve my stress is a bit of an understatement. But then I received a text from a flying buddy who wanted to go flying and preferred to do it with somebody else. Today, that somebody else was me. It took me about a half of a second to say yes to his invitation. I was especially excited because Andrew was flying an aircraft I hadn't flown before, a Turbo Commander 690B. The 690B seats 7 to 10 people with a gross weight of over 10,000 pounds. It's powered by 2 717-horse Garrett Air Research turboprop, and she cruises about 320 miles per hour with an initial climb rate of over 2,800 foot per minute. Her range is just under 1,500 miles, and she can top 30,000 feet. Very different from what I'm used to flying. So Andrew picked me up at Chicago Executive with a plan to stretch the plane's legs on a round-robin flight into Wisconsin and back. My job was to handle comms and assist as much as possible, so familiarizing myself with the panel was job number 1. But I was also interested in understanding everything I could about the plane, especially the startup. As you know from previous videos, I love the engine start of a turbine aircraft, and I was interested to see the process. So join me now as Andrew takes us through that engine start.
I'm done with that. Let's start with before start.
All right, battery switch on, start mode, GPU, PAR, LCR.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Anti-collision lights on, torque limiters off.
Torque limiter is off.
Look at you, NTS switches.
NTS switches here.
Cabin door is locked.
We'll lock it once we get the
Annunciator panel test. Hydraulic pressure checked.
Hydraulic pressure is good.
Flaps are up and indicate up. Fuel quantity is checked.
Fuel quantity is checked. Fuel quantity is right there in front of you.
Yeah. Fuel pump is on.
Fuel pump is going to come on now.
And then engine control switch air start.
Clear on the
clear right. Okay.
Okay, NTS is on.
Feather valve checked. NTS lockout checked. EGT less than 200 degrees. Propeller clear and unfeathered. Look at it go. Wow.
As we taxied out, I asked Andrew, what's the hardest thing about flying the 690B? I was shocked when he said it was taxiing. Evidently, the toe brakes for about the first inch of travel are all about steering, and after that they turn into brakes. Suffice it to say that either on the takeoff roll or on taxiing, you can get some pretty dangerous excursions. So, also suffice it to say, I didn't ask if I could try it. As we taxied out for the takeoff, I had really high expectations of what the acceleration and all would be, and I was not disappointed. Great acceleration, great smoothness of the engines. Quite honestly, it felt like an airliner. There was nothing sluggish about this bird. So the next thing for me was to get comfortable using the avionics, the autopilot, the radios, the navigation. And so while the Garmin 600, the Garmin 750, and the S-Tech autopilot were all very straightforward, and I've had experience with both, the thing that got in the way was my muscle memory of using a Garmin perspective with the GFC 700. I got over it, but I thought it still was the hardest thing about the day. I didn't even mess up on using the wrong tail number, which usually impacts me a lot. I didn't make that mistake once. In terms of in-flight, the plane was as stable as anyone would hope. It's really a great platform for both pilot and passenger. Visibility was great. It was comfortable seats, comfortable seating position. And I'm used to a low-wing airplane, so I wondered what it would be like to fly with a high wing. And obviously, there's really no difference, but it was kind of cool to look straight down. And more important, I think it was a cool factor for a passenger, because the passengers that we take up in general aviation airplanes are generally looking at a wing. And they get the added benefit of seeing the landing gear both deploy and retract with the Commander 690B. I think it's probably a pretty cool experience for them. I found the plane really easy to fly. It was responsive and stable and not heavy on the controls like I had anticipated. Actually, it was very much like flying a Cirrus SR-22. Just a total shock for me and a real pleasant surprise. And a side benefit for us normally aspirated piston guys, I actually got to use the term climb and maintain flight level 190. That added a couple points for the cool factor. Just like my experience with the Piper M600 or the Cirrus Vision Jet, the same words kept coming out of my mouth throughout this trip, and that was, I want one, and I really do. It only seemed like it was a few minutes later, and it was time to make that 180-degree turn back home and set up for the approach at Chicago Executive. As usual, we were asked to keep our speed up because there's always business jets coming in, and they have to keep the separation and make it easy so you're not sending planes around a second time. So we ended up probably a little high and a little fast, and I'll take the blame for that. But as the saying goes, in airplanes with these capabilities, if you can see the runway, you can get down there. And Andrew was quite adept at dropping the flaps, dropping the gear, getting a lot of drag out there. And before you knew it, we were on glide path and on speed for a stable approach and a graceful landing. And as we landed, I'm always reminded that flying is the one experience that never gets old. You know, as we age, we start to run out of those first times, those firsts in our lives. But flying always delivers on that first time feeling. I know you know what I mean. As a matter of fact, if you didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video. So let me state the obvious. I really appreciate you joining me on this flight and all the flights you've been on, and look forward to having you back on our next one. Until then, blue skies and tailwinds.